Hi guys, I recently got a Canon R5 and was using it along with my Tamron 150 to 600mm version 1 lens using an adapter to shoot birds and wildlife. I wanted to see how the new 600mm RF F11 Canon lens would fare when compared to the Tamron. This is a fairly light lens weighing in about 2 pounds as opposed to Tamron, which is almost 4.3 pounds. The Canon lens has to be extended to function. So this is the working length for the lens. And if you extend the Tamron to 600mm, it's still taller than the 600mm Canon lens. Remember, on the Tamron, you also have to add an adapter which will increase the height of the lens and also the weight slightly. So I took both lenses to a local lake to see how they would compare. This is a short handheld using the 600mm f11 lens, and it does a pretty good job of keeping the image stable, and to my eye it looks quite sharp. This is a picture taken using the Canon 600mm lens, and I'll compare it to the Tamron, which is on the right. Now if you zoom in, now both are at f11. To be comparable, I think the Canon definitely looks sharper than the Tamron. Now, if you just looked at the Tamron, it would look sharp. If you didn't compare it with the Canon, the Tamron would still appear sharp. But to my eye, the Canon definitely looks sharper than the Tamron. And also, there seems to be better contrast on the Canon image. Even if you look at the background, it seems to be a little better with more contrast. Now here the ISO is 1600 because it's an f11 lens. Now with the Tamron, this is shot at 6.3 aperture, so the ISO has gone down from 1600 to 500. And you can see the background is a little more blurred on the Tamron. Now if you zoom in, even with the lower ISO, the Canon image still looks better, although the ISO is higher. And then if you look at the details on the feathers, the one on the Tamron is the one on the right, and there the ISO is lower, and the Canon image has a higher ISO. But still, if you look at both, I think the image on the left, which is a Canon at a higher ISO, appears sharper with more contrast, and I don't notice much noise at all. So overall, I think the Canon lens appears much sharper with more contrast. So what about when shooting stationary objects? So here the Canon is on the left and the Tamron is on the right. And you can see that once again, the Canon on the left appears to be much sharper than the Tamron on the right. Now you can get the Tamron to match the sharpness of the Canon if you put it on a tripod and use a timer and is very careful. But even then, it is not quite as sharp as the Canon, which is on the left. Now I repeated this test multiple times. So if you shoot 10 pictures with the Canon handheld, all 10 of them were fairly sharp. Now if you did the same with the Tamron, then they would all be in focus, but perhaps 3 out of the 10 would be almost as sharp as the Canons, but not all. So the Canon was consistently sharper when you handheld it, whereas with the Tamron, some of them would be sharp, some of them would be a little soft. And I think this has to do with the image stabilization on the Canon working much better when paired with the R5 compared with the Tamron. So here are some of the other pictures I took. Here's an egret. I was able to get several pictures of the egret in flight. All of them were in sharp focus. So although only the central focus points are active, that was more than enough to catch these birds in flight. And again, all of the pictures were very sharp. And here are some gulls resting at the far side of the lake, and those came out pretty good as well. And sometimes some of these gulls would take off, circle around the lake and dive in and get a fish. So I was following this gull through my viewfinder, and since the aperture was f11, it was a cloudy day, the camera decided to choose an ISO of about 6000. Now, one of the advantages of the electronic viewfinder is that I immediately knew that since the gull was obviously a white bird, it looked a little overexposed through the viewfinder. So I was immediately able to dial the ISO down to about 1600 and still keep good details on the bird and keep the shutter speed about 1600 or maybe even 2000 to get the bird in flight. And I think this was a good sequence of events where I saw the bird dive down under the water and then come back with a fish. And again, I shot about 20 of these, and all of those were in focus. And obviously, I had to struggle hard to figure out which ones to keep and which ones to discard. Now, as I was shooting the gull, I heard a scattering noise to my right. I swung to the right, dropped to the ground, and took these pictures of several ducks trying to take off into the air. And these pictures looked quite funny to me. Now, the only reason I was able to react so quickly was, I think, because of this particular lens. It's so light, it's so maneuverable. Now, if I had a huge 600mm f4 weighing several pounds, I'm not sure I would have been able to react this quickly and get so many different birds on that 1 hour I had the lens with me. So I think despite the F11 aperture, I think it's an incredibly versatile lens, and I think you'll take it out far more often than you would if you had a f4 600mm lens, which is a fantastic lens, of course. But I think for the general purpose amateur hobbyist, I think this is a really great lens. So in summary, what are the pros of this lens? The lens is very sharp. It has good contrast. It's extremely lightweight and therefore portable. And most importantly, it's fun to shoot. And if you have it, you'll take it everywhere on big trips, on short trips. If you travel overseas, it's easy to take. And I really enjoyed shooting with it. Now, what are the cons? So it is an f11 lens, so the aperture is smaller, leading to higher ISO and higher noise. That being said, the R5 can definitely handle much higher noise, and the R5 paired with this lens, even at higher ISOs, the images actually look better than those taken with the Tamron at lower ISOs. Obviously, it's a fixed focal length, so there's no zoom, so that might cause issues if you want to shoot really close by, and the minimum focus distance is quite long for this lens. Also, only the central focus points are active, so the focus points don't go to the edge of the frame like with other lenses. But I didn't find that to be too limiting in my experience with the lens. So I hope you enjoyed this review. I certainly enjoyed making it, and I enjoyed shooting with the lens. So happy photography and have a good day. Bye-bye.